is that the United States public school system fails to prepare students for their future. My opponent's secondary claims is that public school practices negatively impact students' health, and the second, that high school fails to prepare students for college and beyond. My response to secondary claim 1. My opponent's claim is that the lack of counselors is first. Oh, sorry. Okay, so he says that the lack of counselors. The speaker mentions leaving school counselors out of the school reform, but does not support any statistics that provide information on the student-to-counselor ratio. The ASCA, also known as the American School Counseling Association, researched and made a survey in which they discovered that by spending 60% of his or her time in contact with a counselor could serve 235 students. So when the speaker mentions the lack of counselors, he doesn't specify how many counselors there are in a school and how many students belong to each counselor. He also says that the counselors provided often lack sufficient training in schools and does not provide sufficient information why the lack of sufficient training on the counselors impacts the students' health. In keeping with the ASCA national model, school counselors are now encouraged to view school counseling as a crucial educational function that is integral to academic achievement and overall student success, with the objective of helping students overcome barriers to learning. The ASCA states that the counselors now not only have the education necessary to provide help to the students, but they're also involved on their educational form, which is on what they're learning and class-based performances. My response to secondary claim 2. In his point B, he states that there is not individual student supports in schools. He states that there is not individual supports for students, but does not specify what type of support is needed in the school. In reality, a student's willingness to seek help is a function of the interaction between his recognized needs and his perception of the counselor's ability to meet these needs. In his claim, he states that there's not enough support for the student, but he doesn't specify the support, what support they need. There's different types of supports in the school. Not only counselors are needed for that, the teachers also provide support, and the student has to take part in reaching out for that support. He also states that students are not acquiring the necessary skills in K-12 education, and includes a quote that Orfield and Paul found high school's counseling programs at fault for students and parents' lack of necessary college access information, including an understanding of the influence of high school debt, college admissions requirements, and the system of college costs and financial aid. Going back to the evidence, the counterclaim that I had previously mentioned, the ASCA national model requires the counselors to have education based for college needs. So the counselors are prepared to help the students with their college applications and their financial needs. They usually help them fill out the applications for financial aid, provide them with deadlines, and with schools that they are able to apply to. That's all.
Right, the structural stuff is pretty good to begin with, so we know what the argument is and what the supporting points are going to be. Your argument on the first point seems to be primarily a challenge to the lack of evidence that the advocate presented, and an argument that says that the ASCA model requires all these other alternative sorts of things. And I think the counterclaim that talks about the counseling groups expectations, what their education requirements are, what the ratios are, that I think is the strong argument that you've got here. Because in essence, if the key link here between college success and the high schools is the counseling department, you've suggested that we've addressed those kinds of issues, that they are well prepared in regard to that. I don't know that the advocate was limited just to the counseling argument. If they were, then I think you are pretty solid in responding to it. If there is other information suggesting that the schools are lacking resources in some way, then I think there needs to be a little bit more argument. Your position seems to be that there's no evidence on any of those other things being lacking. So, the argument was a couple of weeks ago, so we didn't hear it immediately ahead of time. I'll take you at face value that that's what you're saying, and that's a good press to be making on this particular point. On the second point, when it comes to support for services, I think you've got a good argument here that suggests that it depends on student willingness, parents willing to avail themselves of the help that's available, and teachers contributing to the problem. That's a good general philosophy. What we don't have is any evidence that suggests that the reason that students are not getting through is because they aren't following through with their counselors. They have this resource available to them and they don't follow through. That's what we need, is some information that suggests that the students don't come in, they don't ask the questions, the teachers are not directing them in some way, shape, or form, even though the teachers are capable of providing them direction. And it's not an inherent problem so much as it is maybe a parent problem. The parents are not following through, or the students are not following through. And then you kind of come back to your counterclaim argument again that says, look, the model system for the counselors is that they have this education, they have those requirements. I think that's a good response. So as everything centers around the counseling issue, I think you're doing a pretty good job. If there are other arguments that were not addressed directly, then maybe it's a little bit thin. You also look a little nervous during the presentation. Your feet are shifting all over the place. You got your arms behind the back the whole time that you're speaking. Look, where are you? How you been? A little bit like, one of those, the third grade kid reading in front of the class. You got to, be a little more assertive. You got an argument here. Don't be shy about making it. It's just these people that you're talking to. All right, thank you. So Joseph, you're really not scheduled for tonight. You're scheduled for. I'll put you at the bottom of the pile here for a minute.
That's okay. We had to bring it in today.
That's all right. That's all right. Shamil is going to be our next speaker.